The task of foam rolling has divided the running community for over a decade, and runners are desperate to know, does the research reveal foam rolling as a helpful tool, or is it a waste of time? So I decided to dive into the research while also putting my own body, running, and foam roller through the ultimate test to help point you in the right direction. In fact, my girlfriend and I were about to go on a holiday, so you can come on a journey with me as we go on a road trip across the country, and I'm going to foam roll each day and compare various parameters to see if I can record any improvement. But before I can start day one, I needed to record my flexibility of all the muscle groups and joints. I wanted to be thorough, so I documented the range of movement from the first onset of stretch and also my maximum stretch. And here are my pre-foam rolling results. Let's see if any of them change after 30 days. And I want you to be involved in the process as well. So leave a comment on your experiences with foam rolling, including both the pros and the cons. Apart from increasing flexibility, one of the other proposed benefits of foam rolling is to release active trigger points. So my first foam rolling session, I also noted the tenderness of each muscle group out of 10 in the hope that the sensitivity would drop by day 30.
Day one, let's get to it.
Here are the active trigger point results after day one. On day two, our bags were packed and we were ready to hit the open road. But I wanted to perform one more test before leaving, and that was testing out my overall feel of running, both pre and post rolling. So after a quick warm up on the treadmill, I completed my foam rolling technique for about 10 minutes, and then I jumped back on the treadmill to observe any immediate effects. I'm also commenting on my journey in my spreadsheet throughout this 30 days. And for this treadmill test, I commented, okay, running felt a bit more fluent, but overall hard to say. Is it because I've already warmed up? And probably not worth the 10 to 15 minutes of foam rolling based on the benefits I might have been feeling. Needless to say, I'm not very convinced based on the time and effort that it took. We then hit the road and made our way to Apollo Bay and stayed at, well, let's call it a cozy motel. Day three, not a lot of space, but working with what I've got. It's also worth mentioning that on day three, I put my glutes were more tender than usual. I was hoping for tenderness to head in the other direction, but maybe my body was just getting used to the foam rolling. Day four, I also commented that during that morning run, my calves were pretty tender, stiff, and kind of sore. Which brings me to a common misconception that a lot of runners come across. A lot of runners keep complaining that their muscles are always tight and stiff, and this is because when they stretch a muscle early in that range of movement, it starts to cause a bit of muscle soreness, which they interpret this as tightness. But it may not be actually physically tight. Instead, my bet is that it's actually just really sore. Take a chest press, for example. If I completed a tough workout and then the next day I notice a lot of soreness when I stretch, I can interpret this as my pecs being tight. But they aren't tight at all. They're just sore from the workout that I did the day before. So going back to the runner who constantly feels stiff and tight, and therefore compelled to constantly stretch or foam roll, they may actually be drawing their attention in the wrong direction. Instead, they should probably be focusing on their training volumes, their overall training intensity, the quality of their sleep, and nutrition, and then making the necessary adjustments if they find this balance between training and recovery is off. By day 7, we'd reached Kangaroo Island off the coast of South Australia. Yes, it's full of kangaroos. This was perfect timing for my next test, assessing if foam rolling would help with delayed onset muscle soreness. The plan was simple: do a workout that I knew would cause DOMS. This was kettlebell swings, 4 sets of 20, and lunges, 4 sets of 5 on each side with a 24 kilogram kettlebell. Yes, I brought a kettlebell with me on our road trip. Don't judge me. I would then see how much DOMS I had along with how many days it lasted without any foam rolling involved. Once I was fully recovered, I'd repeat the process again, this time with a lot of foam rolling before and after, and see if the DOMS severity and the duration had changed.
So I've just woken up on a windy morning on Kangaroo Island, and as expected my glutes are very sore, but let's try and work out how sore.
My DOMS testing involved ranking soreness based on tenderness to touch, soreness with stretching, activating that muscle, and that left me with these results. Surprisingly, I didn't have much soreness through my hamstrings, but prior to this challenge, I actually just completed a 30-day Nordic challenge, so maybe my hamstrings were just really strong. I also documented my DOMS over the subsequent days, so the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So as you can see, day 1, you can see all that tenderness that I mentioned. Day 2, the tenderness still there, muscle activation mild, and I also mentioned like running was a 1 or a 2 out of 10 soreness for the first 5 minutes, just, you know, general DOMS sort of stuff. And then day 3, things were getting significantly better, and then by day 4, I was fully recovered from my DOMS. Once I fully recovered, I repeated my strength workout, but with the foam roller before and after. And you know what? The next day I felt significantly better. So day 12 was when I did the second repeat of my kettlebell swings and lunges, and come day 13, I had significant reduction in my DOMS.
Now there could be a few reasons for this. Either the foam roller was magic, or I've just gotten used to that particular workout. This is only because I hadn't done kettlebell workouts in a very, very long time, and it usually only takes me a couple of sessions for my body to, I guess, recognize that workout. The only way I could know for sure would be to do the process again without foam rolling and see if I'm really sore. If I am really sore the third time around, the foam roller can take the crown on this test.
But doing this process a third time wasn't something I was prepared for. So I'll get around to that next week after I complete my next test. By day 14, we'd reached the Flinders Ranges, and I had another test I needed to do, which was testing out my sprinting performance. Day 1 of this test, I sprinted around a loop and timed myself. Then the next day, I did a foam rolling session beforehand and redid the test. Safe to say it was too close to call. By day 17, we were heading back home and stayed at the Grampians for one night. And day 17 was what I was most excited about, because this was my third attempt of kettlebell swings and lunges without foam rolling to see if my DOMS had returned, which would prove that foam rolling helps with post-workout muscle soreness. And unfortunately, it didn't. Day 17 was the third test, and the next day I reported almost no DOMS, which just means that my body was just getting used to the workout. But I wasn't going to give up hope, because I still had my trigger point tenderness and my flexibility test to go. And now that I'm back home, I was using the final 2 weeks to really smash this out and see if I can get some results.
This is also a good opportunity to discuss the available research on foam rolling. When focusing on performance and recovery, we can draw our attention to this systematic review. When pre-rolling for performance, this paper could only find a benefit for sprinters, to which in the recreational population was as small as 0.3%, which the authors write, it may be barely noticeable due to the likely greater within athlete variability. When it comes to flexibility, one paper in this systematic review reports that 62% of the population will experience short-term improvements. But this is only short-term and doesn't seem to carry over to performance. For recovery, this paper also mentions that foam rolling can help reduce muscle pain by inhibiting the pain signals. But it seems like it doesn't help accelerate the healing process. Instead, it only just dampens pain signals. So you can interpret this information as a pro or a con, depending how you want to interpret it. The paper concluded, pre-rolling seems to be an effective strategy for short-term improvements in flexibility without decreasing muscle performance. The underlying mechanisms, however, remain elusive and contradictory. Positive effects of alleviating muscle soreness with a larger body of evidence endorses the utilization of post-rolling. Interestingly, this next paper shows that foam rolling does nothing for releasing or lengthening your ITB. So if you have ITB friction syndrome and you're told to foam roll on it, you might be wasting your time. However, when it comes to injury prevention, I did find this recent article which showed if you adhere to an 18-week regime of foam rolling and strength training, you're 75% less likely to sustain an injury. Unfortunately, based on this particular study design, we can't determine if the effects are from foam rolling, strength training, or a combination of both.
The final days of my foam rolling challenge were approaching, and I was excited to see the final results. During the last foam rolling session, this was my ranking of tenderness for each muscle group. Compare that to day one, there was a very small decrease in my calf and my quad tenderness, but I don't really deem this significant. So I'm not quite sure if there is any long-term effect on trigger points. In fact, the systematic review that I mentioned earlier also said that to date, there is no concrete evidence for the effectiveness of brief rolling massages for trigger point therapy. Which brings me to the most comprehensive and anticipated result of them all. On day 31, I had my flexibility remeasured to see if any carryover was identified. And here are the results. As you can see, everything is fairly consistent across the board except for my adductor flexibility. Not the absolute flexibility, but my first point of perceived stretch. Based on all the time and effort it took me to get these results, I haven't really come across anything compelling enough to warrant me to foam roll. But that doesn't mean your outcome would be the same, so comment below on the pros and cons of your foam rolling experience.